y'all. I'm author CJ Peterson. Over here is my co-host, author Michael Scott Clifton. I'm slightly under the weather today, so my head's a little foggy. Um, I'm going to start with me this time. Basically, what I have going on this week is we have Brazoria Comic Con down in Lake Jackson, Texas, so cannot wait to do that. And then today we're talking about to describe. Mike, how was your week? What you got going on?
Well, it's been a beautiful week so far. Sunny weather. Temperatures actually got up to 72 degrees yesterday after
Nice.
the frozen ice box. We had sub-zero temperatures the week before. And so, been outside working in the yard. I also have my first Comic-Con this weekend. The Little Rock Anime Con in Little Rock, Arkansas. And we are regular participants to the Little Rock Comic Con, but this is our first time to go to an anime Comic Con. So anyway, that's where Melanie and I will be on Saturday and Sunday. It'll be at the State Convention Center in downtown Little Rock. And so if you happen to be in the area, come on by.
Awesome. Give me just a second. I need to figure out who that is. Stephanie Ladoni says hi. It didn't tell me, Stephanie, who you were, so hi.
Hello.
Like I said, this weekend, which I'm going to be seeing Stephanie at, is the Brazoria Comic Con down in Lake Jackson, Texas. Guests are going to be Stephanie Naldoni, John Grimian, Chuck Huber, Carrie Means, Roger Bumpus, and Scott Steiner. So kind of an interesting crew. Kind of curious to see how it's going to work out. But it's a fun sounding crew, and I know half of them. So we've had them at multiple, so I'm excited to see them again. It'll be fun.
Yeah.
So this week we're going to be talking about the writer's purpose to describe. This is going to be ending our series. Next week we're going to be talking about how to handle a critique/review, because that is a thing that authors do need to deal with. And then the next week we're going to be talking about how to give one. And then we're going to have our first guest for the 2024 season, David Baylog of Owl Talon Press. He's also a fantasy author on the 21st of February. So that kind of gives you a head up of what we got coming on. Hold on. To describe, it's a basic English person, place, thing, idea, noun. You're going to describe the person. You're going to describe where they're at. That's their setting. You're going to describe, if they're in a house, are they in a car? Where are they? Are they in the woods? And, maybe describe an idea. One thing that's key with these is keeping with the 5 senses. And Mike, I have cold brain, so I'm going to need your help with that. 5 senses are sight,
see, hear, taste, feel. That's 4.
see, hear, taste, touch,
See,
smell.
smell. Yep, there's those 5. Yep.
So it's your basic show don't tell. You want to put them into the story or into wherever it is you're working on. So you can even use the describe in owner's manuals or in procedural manuals, because you need to describe different settings, certain things going on. It's not limited to fiction only. To describe, as I just said, it's the ultimate show don't tell. This is probably the biggest mantra that I hear in the author world is show don't tell.
Okay.
Mike, would you like to explain to everybody what that means?
So showing is actually in the writing. You are like, for example, consider that you're a painter, but your paint are your words. And so when you're describing a scene, much like a painter would be painting a image, the more detail that you include in the painting, the more detail that you include in your words, the better the description. Instead of saying, Joe didn't feel good, describe it. Joe's head was just splitting from the hangover he had from the the party, the wild party the night before. That's describing. Um, Instead of saying that he walked into a room with bright colors, describe the colors. The wall was painted, a bright blue or a psychedelic purple or something like that. If you're talking about a person, for example, as a writer, and you say your character is angry, well, describe the anger. I mean, what does anger look like?
Mhm.
Anger can be, you know, they're they're frowning, or which is kind of a cliche. That's not really not a good example, but their eyes are
Clenched
narrowed,
fists
their
to the
forehead,
sides.
yeah, and the sound, they growled at you. Well, a person growling at you is not happy. Uh, as opposed to just he growled or something. So, and the biggest, as you pointed out, CJ, the biggest mistake that a lot of authors, especially those that are just beginning, is they do a lot of showing. I was guilty of that. I mean, a lot of telling, excuse me, and not showing. And I was guilty of that. And I think it's, unless you, I mean, there are some authors that are naturally gifted. I wasn't one of them, where these things just come to you without having to learn them. But if you go back to your favorite author that you like, look at their books and see how they describe the scenes in which their characters populate. And you will see that one of the reasons why they're your favorite author, or maybe it's a favorite book, is because the description is vivid and it's not telling, you're actually showing. And that's kind of a cliche, show don't tell. I mean, like you said, CJ, how many, if either one of us had a nickel for every time we've heard that, we'd be right up there with Zuckerman and
Mhm.
Elon Musk and all of them. But it is important. It is important. And a vivid description is the better you can describe things.
Mhm.
Um, I like the bullet that you have, can inundate with too much description.
Mhm.
So, there's a balancing act there. And I don't think, and if you had put five authors in a room, I don't think any of those five would probably agree on how much is too much description and how much is too little. I
Mhm.
don't. I think that's kind of up to the genre that you're writing in, and I also think it has to do with the writer's style, the author's style, and
But if you're into 3 pages and you're still writing the scene, you may wanna cut it
right,
back a little.
right. Now, you and I write in the fantasy world, or we write books that are often in the fantasy realm, and fantasy does have world building, which does take up more description. It requires more description.
But
I
you're
would,
not when you're doing it, um, you're the open portal is a really good example. You didn't just list everything about this new world. You let them experience it through her eyes. So you instead of listing, like our last bullet point, kind of sprinkle it around there.
instead of doing an information dump, like you
Mhm.
said. Um, I will say, we've talked about this before in previous podcasts. I believe the younger the audience,
Mhm.
uh, the less patience they have with too much description, because they live in a, I mean, they are the, you know they live in an era, in a time where acronyms rule. you
Mhm.
know that's how they
Instant instant gratification.
that's how they
Mhm.
text, that's often how they talk. And so if you overwhelm your audience with too much description. However, I think, this is my point of view, I would rather be guilty of too much description than too little.
Mhm.
I think there's more pitfalls for those who don't write enough description, because I think a lot of books that are not very successful are authors that struggle to get their, to get an audience. Often it has to do with the fact that the description is somewhat lacking, either in amount, if you want to call it that, or just in how they impart description. And an interesting thing is this goes for nonfiction too. One of
Mhm.
the best books I ever read that was nonfiction was a, a book on the Indianapolis, which was uh, the U.S. Navy ship that delivered the bomb that that was dropped on Hiroshima or Nagasaki that ended World War II. Indianapolis was torpedoed by a Japanese submarine on its way back from its mission, and and of course it was a harrowing tale that the thousands of sailors died, thousands more were thrown into the ocean. Many of them were eaten by sharks. And so, even though it was a historical fact, the depiction and description, even in a nonfiction setting, can be just as important, if not more important, than a fiction story or a fiction book.
Well,
And
and the
my
most important aspect of that though is to basically immerse the reader into the situation.
right.
Put them there. That's your show don't tell.
Uh,
I'm going to talk about vivid sounds, smells. It's not just sights. It's touch. Ran her fingers along the brick wall. Walked into a, say they're going into the morgue. It was very clinical, very clean. The chemicals were overpowering, along with the smell of decomp. I mean, there's a lot of things that you can put into there. Don't just limit it to sites and, you know, showing
device.
the reader what's there. Make sure to hit them all.
Yeah, the more senses.
Sometimes they walked into the crime scene. The taste of blood was almost palpable. You could almost taste it, because it was so strong. There's a lot of areas that you can make sure to use that and use it to your advantage. Can you inundate with too much? Yeah. Um, but if you have balance, balance is the key to pretty much anything. Balance it out with your description versus continuing the story, because your reader will get stuck in the description too much
Right.
and they're not going to remember where you were in the storyline if you
Imagine,
change.
imagine if your character has a secret.
Hmm.
Imagine if that is part of the story that a book is based upon. And right from the jump, you tell the readers what that secret is.
Yeah.
Well, why should they continue to read from that point forward? You've given the store away, so to speak. So, you have to balance it out, like you said, and you do. It's important often, depending again on the type of story you're writing, but almost in all cases, don't do an information dump. Sprinkle it along, because if it's an interesting story, your readers will eagerly follow it and look forward to, because they know it's coming. They know that
Hmm.
you're going, to not leave them hanging. You're gonna complete the picture for them at some point in the book.
Exactly. And even describing her characters. She brushed a strand of her long auburn hair out of her face, or her eyes flashed in anger. Her green eyes flashed in anger, or she stood up to her full height, almost matching his 6-foot frame. That stuff tells you what this character looks like without listing it out. There's a difference between that and red hair, green eyes, 5'11".
The book that I'm writing right now, for example, the main character in it uh, is a coach that moves to a small town, but there's a reason he has moved, and what I've tried to do is I've tried to, sort of paint the picture on what type of individual the main character is and how he thinks and feels, but not why, not yet. And so what I've done is I have taken, the story and given hints of why he moved there
Mhm.
or what happened, but it's something where you have to follow along in the story before you actually get the complete picture. Again, you don't want to give the story away right from the jump unless it has something to do with what comes later that may even be better. And that could also be true.
Mhm. Definitely. Yeah, when we're talking about using description in works, we've touched on a few of 'em: fiction, nonfiction, manuals, essays, poems. They can create a picture. Memoirs, we talked about travel, basically all forms. We're even describing even in text, when you get that list.
The critique group I belong to, one of your clients, Skip Hughes,
Mhm.
is just about. I don't know if he's told you this, CG. He's just about to complete his poetry book or compilation, and so he's been bringing his poems to our critique group for us to look at and to critique. And I am not a poetry person, never
Mhm.
have been, and with all due respect to Skip, probably never will be. However, poems I have found by critiquing his work are very, very descriptive.
Mhm.
In fact, I think that's what makes poetry is that it's a lyrical form of writing that paints a very vivid picture, and so and I like his Skip is pretty good at poetry. He's a great poet, and his poems reflect that. But it's poems are very descriptive, even though they don't have the popularity, say, today that they might have had 50 to 100 years ago. Uh,
Well, and the talent that comes from creating, a lot of the vivid pictures that are in poetry. My husband wrote some from his tours in Iraq, and you're there. And you're there in a matter of, you know, just a few words. And to me, it's crazy because it might take me half a chapter to get to that much description.
it's I mean, description is, I don't take whatever type of genre writing, fiction, as you've listed them all. Description is always going to be, if not, it's going to be an essential element of it, if not the most essential element. And memoirs, obviously. Why does one write memoirs?
Mhm.
You're describing, right, what happened in a person's life. And that's exactly what you travel. Travel. That's a whole industry has risen up over travel because they're describing the places they want you to go to and to spend money to fly to or take a cruise to or something like that. It's all description. And
Mhm.
so, and of
Well,
course,
even advertisements, they describe, not even necessarily in the pictures that you see, but in if you were to close your eyes and listen to a lot of advertisements, some of them, you can like the gain, the smelling, the sniffing,
oh, yeah,
you know. I
I was,
mean,
chuck- I was chuckling at the manuals
uh,
because the, uh, the three words that all parents dread are some assembly required. And uh, as someone who has cursed numerous manuals that claim to lead you step by step through how to assemble, put something together, or how to troubleshoot a problem or something like that, I can tell you with complete assurance that manuals need to be more descriptive. Okay, don't assume things that your reader, well, what is
mhm.
that? What is this thing they mentioned? I don't know what that is. So yeah,
And you brought up a very good point. Don't assume your reader knows.
no.
When you go to put them in there, say you were describing a fire scene. Not everyone's a fireman or a fire person. You know, they don't know what that smells like, feels like, sounds like. The roar. They don't know what all that feels like. They're not a cop. They don't know what it smells like to fire a weapon. Or a hunter. There are a lot of things that you need to make sure that you don't assume the reader knows just because you do.
Can you imagine a how-to manual that Steve Jobs might have created for an Apple
Mm,
computer? Oh my goodness. Talk about
no.
your his, assuming things, that people don't know. And anyway, like I said, I've had to ask forgiveness many times for saying choice words on these so-called manuals that are supposed to be giving simple and easy descriptions on how to do things.
Well, even procedural manuals when it comes to not just some assembly required, but procedures in, you know, manufacturing or security or whatever, those have to be descriptive enough that people can follow them when you're working with various computer programs. You have to describe that stuff so they know what they're looking for. There's nothing worse than booting up a computer and going, okay, now what?
We are not all created equal when it comes to computer savviness or mechanical skills or cooking skills or speaking skills, et cetera, et cetera, et cetera.
I
And
mean, I praise the ones that started the For Dummies series because God bless them. They got me through a lot.
well, by as far as technology goes, and of course you know this very well, CJ, um, because I've asked you many questions in terms of technology and things, but seems like two steps forward and then three steps back, or technology advances three steps forward, and I'm only making two at a time. So
Yeah, to
yeah,
be fair, that is fluid though.
yeah.
The world of computers and technology is continuously flowing. So just when you think you've got it, they go and throw another curveball in it, and it
And
gets
add AI
frustrating.
to the mix now, and so it's really gonna be fun the next few years.
That's something that's like a whole other podcast though, regarding AI and show don't tell and stuff like that, because that's a whole other podcast. I know that
We
we've done one on AI.
didn't even
Um,
scratch the surface.
exactly. That goes so deep even into things like research. Our professors have told us they actually have systems now that you run it through and they will tell the teacher how much of it is AI written.
I received a Facebook ad or Facebook was it Facebook? Yeah, I think it was Facebook. No, email, Facebook and email ad on AI doing audiobooks for you. And yeah, said,
Hmm.
you don't like, instead of trying to find a narrator, you let AI do that for you. And that's coming for audiobooks, you know, just like everything else.
I don't know. I'm kind of old school. I like the human aspect of it all, but that's me. I digress. So basically, description. When it comes to description, they're in everything and everywhere. Make sure to immerse your reader, whatever form of descriptive writing that you're using. Make sure to not inundate them with too much detail, but to sprinkle it out. You can hit them. You don't need to hit them over the hammer with a head when it comes to how much detail is around them. Do it in a way that they don't even know that they're reading it as detail and description.
The show don't tell. I mean, that I think everybody probably familiar with that. Using the five senses in your descriptions, uh, not overwhelming the reader by giving away the whole store right from the jump and doing an info dump on them instead of parsing it out through the course of the book or as needed when you get to a crucial point in a story. Um, and and again, if you're not sure on how much description is too much or how little is too little, um, you know, if you belong to a critique group or you have a beta reader or you have someone that you can even bounce ideas off of. Just read the passage, whatever it is that you think maybe your description is off for whatever reason. See what they get, some feedback, see what they think.
Mhm.
But generally, if you this again, this is my point of view. If you have to choose between too much or too little description, I would say err on the side of too much, because you can always go back and you can pare that down.
Mhm.
Adding description is a whole lot more work after
Mhm.
the fact.
I know sometimes I'll be sitting in the chair and I'll be doing something with my hands. My husband's like, "What are you doing?" I said, "I need to figure out how to write what I'm doing." You know, how many times have you done that where it's like you're trying to tie a knot or something or
How do you describe? Yeah, yeah.
yeah, it's like, okay, you got to do this, but not tediously. You have to, or like, what does this mean? Oh, that's a furrowed brow. Okay. Not just but scrunched nose and, try to figure out what does my face look like right now.
And one thing we really didn't talk about when we um, have discussed description is you can take one sentence, okay, and pack as much description in one sentence as you can in a paragraph filled of extraneous material.
Mhm.
I mean, think about
Don't go too much into that one. We have that one going on at 20th of February.
just well, I'm
Don't
just
don't
saying
don't
that
go too much into that one.
you can tell a lot in one sentence if you craft that sentence wisely. You can get a lot of description in one sentence, and
You can get a
and the
lot of
best
you can get
authors do it.
yeah, and you can get a lot into a story. The
Yes,
biggest challenge I did for myself was writing in anthologies. Try writing a complete story in 2,500 or 3,500 to 7,000 words. You got to do everything that's in that.
people just we live in a day and time where you have impatient readers.
Hmm.
I mean, it's just a fact, and so you just have to, I mean, that's the reality of the times in which we live. I mean, would War and Peace still be a great novel, or Pride and
It'd be
Prejudice?
a doorstop.
Yeah, I mean, today I don't think so, but I don't know that for a fact, but I don't think it would. And so you know, description is important, but description that is not you know too wordy, if you for want of a better word.
Kind of think of it as a recipe. When you're building a recipe and you go to put your herbs and spices and you're not just going to dump them all in there and pray for the best. You're going to put a little bit in there, stir it up, put a little bit more in, stir it up, taste it, say, okay, did I put too much in? Because you can always put more in. You can't take a whole
Yes,
lot out.
that's right.
When it comes to spices, you can overspice. So kind of think of it as making a spaghetti sauce. Sprinkle a little at a time, stir it in, taste it. Is it good? Do you need to add a little bit more? Do you need a different flavor in it? There's a lot of things to consider.
And not to beat a dead horse too much, but one of the bullet points that you listed, CJ, just remember the five senses. Again, that's real important: color, taste, touch, smell. Uh, those things are all important, and the more you can include in a description, the more vivid it will be for the reader.
Definitely. All right, y'all. It has been fun. We're done with our writer's purpose series. We're heading into the next few weeks on how to handle and how to give a critique or a review. That's something that every reader needs to know, and actually, every writer needs to know how to handle that, how to give it just as much as a reader does.
Exactly.
So, thank you guys so much. We will catch you guys next week, same time, same sandbox. Bye.